Endurance came off the back of me wanting to do a play based on inspirational people of the past and present from different countries and backgrounds and things. And so I advertised for a writer. We came up with the concept, and this was almost a year ago. And that was how Endurance came about.
I met Robbie, the director and the artistic director of RAaW, and she told me her idea, and then we had a brainstorming about what other characters could be used to really accentuate the struggles of all the three characters together, so they could all complement each other but also show the unity in their oppression. And then after doing that, we did a lot of research into the sort of historical side of the storylines, and also spoke with the actors and saw which bits really appealed to them and saw which bits struck upon their emotions to really emphasise those bits as well. And then from that, started fleshing out a story, and then through rehearsal, meeting up with everyone every week, and then it all started to take more and more form.
I wouldn't have done something like this if I wasn't sure that I had a really strong group of people around me in terms of crew and cast, and they have been completely amazing on this journey.
Yeah, there's a lot of research done into it. I mean, there's a lot of things that I didn't know as well, and there's a lot of things that, you know, it's good to always recap on like history, and always good to, you know, go back to it. And I think whilst doing the play, I've relearned, you know, things that I wouldn't have thought, imagined, etc. So
I think the issues in the play is very important to be spoken about again, because obviously slavery has been spoken about for a long time, but the perspective of this character, and what I enjoy about that particular bit is you see when they were kids, there was no boundaries, as in the black children and white children would play together, of the slaves and the rich people. But later on, when the roles change, then they're not anymore, just because their roles have changed in the context of they've grown up, and now the white girl is the head of the household, and the white guy, which I play, and the black girl that they grew up with is now, number one, a sex object, and number two, just treated really poorly. Secondly, I think the Israeli-Palestine issues that we're talking about in this play, I didn't know much about it, and I'm Turkish and it's a neighbouring country, but I really didn't know. And to be honest, I didn't care that much either, because I don't know. What you don't know is not going to hurt you. But looking into it, it's really bad and really tough. And I'm surprised when I was even looking online, there are lots of documentaries and things when you look specifically for it, but nothing in the main media, apart from when they had these whole pro-Palestine and Gaza Strip things going on Twitter with the celebrities. It's not spoken about, and it's just really tough and sad to see that things like this still continue in 2015.
I think there's a bit of a disillusion in people at the moment. I think we feel that we're a lot more advanced, we're healthier, more educated, you know, with things like technology and social media, where we're more connected than ever. In actual fact, we're more divorced than ever before, because, you know, we have this false sense of security that we know everything, that there's nothing new to be seen, nothing new to be heard, but yet with plays like this showcasing the problems that are still in our society, you've really got to kind of step back a bit, look at yourself and go, am I actually open to the world? You know, am I risking enough and loving life enough to take that next step and to communicate with people? Like, you know, look at your friendship group. How diverse is it? You know, look at who you work with. Like, is that glass ceiling still there? Probably, you know, it's a big issue at the moment, and, you know, those are just on small scales. This play deals with the bigger scale things that necessarily people hide from. So
because we're dealing with such intense subjects in people's lives and moments in history and, you know, political arenas, we've had to take no punches in not getting it right, and so the challenges have come from all angles: accents, research, the look of the play, the feel of the whole thing, the music. It's endless, but it's been fantastic, and I hope that people will get something out of it, walk away with a little bit of a plan to do something in the world, to change the world a little bit, the place that they live in.
There's 3 different periods in the show, so you have sort of modern and then 19th century and 1950s all together, and it's obviously you can't have a set
that has any sort of time in it at all. You've got to, so it's quite tricky to build them a space without they could play with, and then the people come in and you sort of bring the period into it with props and their costume. So that was quite a challenge, yeah.
It's been a really intense rehearsal process, I think. Obviously the issues in the play are sort of, you know, they're very important, and it's quite dark, a lot of the play. So, and I think particularly for me, the character that I'm playing, it's been a real challenge for me because I'm not used to playing, I've never really played a character like her before, who is so dark and kind of twisted in a way. And it's been really challenging for me to try and find a motivation that I, as the actress, can believe in order to portray a truthful version of this character. I'd certainly say that it's affected me. A lot of the scenes that we do, they're, you know, they're not very nice. They're quite horrific, even. And I think I found it quite upsetting at times, sort of having to kind of go through that repeatedly, and, you know, seeing the way it affects the other actors as well. So yeah, it's definitely had a big impact on me.
All the stories go on through, I mean, it goes over 2 centuries almost, but the stories are still relevant today. It's still going on in Palestine and Israel. These issues are still a big problem, and I think it's important that we address these, otherwise they can get forgotten about. I was getting my news from the media, the mainstream media, and it's only when you look into the stories of these people, like Adam, where you find out that it's so horrific. And the news don't report on these individual stories, and it's when you really get to know the people is when you really start to understand from a human side how much it's affecting people.
What inspired me to do it? Well, I now have 2 daughters, and I think things change a little bit. Well, for me they have, and I think it's important for me to do what I can for things that I care about, and I care about the world that we live in, and people that aren't so fortunate as ourselves, and not just being sad about it, but actually doing something about it, no matter how little it is. And I think that if everybody did something little, it would be a better place, a better world to live in.
I think it's important to address them because they are issues which I think are still prevalent in some ways, and I think to ignore them would mean like you allow them to continue, and I think they need to be addressed to be able to make change for the better. I feel many things towards it. One of them is I feel a sort of responsibility as someone who is not enslaved to try and do something about it and try and make a difference in some way, and this play is a great opportunity to start that. I'm just trying to, in line with the title, highlight the endurance that many people faced through slavery, and to highlight sort of the pain that they went through, but also the strength that they had whilst going through it.
Just in terms of racism and slavery, you know, because I've experienced racism before, so it's a thing where back then, well, years ago, I used to deal with it being physical. So if someone was racist towards me, I'll be very aggressive towards them, and it'll probably escalate into something else. But now that I'm more mature and I just see things, you know, as in when racism comes my way, I try to deflect it and walk away from it, just in terms of reacting to it. It's not a message, but it's just the fact that these things are still, these kind of things are still happening. Not just in terms of slavery, but just in terms of how certain people are treated, certain backgrounds are treated, just in general in society today. So it's just the fact that these things are still going on, and we kind of overlook it. Like even in work placements, they're happening, in every situation they're happening. So it's just, the message I'm just trying to convey is, you know, it's still out there, regardless whether it's slavery or not. It can be anything, whether it's racism, whether it's being prejudiced against someone else, or whether it's because she's a female or he's a male. It's still happening regardless.
My story in particular, I don't think there's a lot of media coverage. These details that I had to research then for the play, they're not publicly known about what's going on there. So the whole conflict between Israel and Palestinians, there is, you know, the superficial information, but what's really underneath about personal lives, you don't really get to know that, and it's quite shocking, especially to be involved in something like that now. It feels really real.
Sometimes people need a wake-up call to really believe that this stuff does happen, and it's, you know, like to anyone. Do you know, I think it's given me more of an understanding as to how much fear can play a part in people's lives, like how much it can affect them and like change their actions, even if it's for the right way or the wrong way.
Yeah, well, I think it's awful. I think all of it is awful. I wouldn't be doing a play that I'm feeling so strongly about if I didn't think that. But I also think it's important to talk about, because whether you personally think it's still going on or not, we've got to have an awareness of it. We've got to know that it has happened, so we can learn from those mistakes and make sure nothing like that happens again.
As just like me, like sometimes you might think that because they're from a different culture or a different country that people are or they know different things to you, that they're like different people, but they're not. Like, they're all human. Like, that's why I think it's important to address it all, because you just realise that they're just like you at the end of the day. I think as a lot of things, if they're not happening close to home, they just kind of get pushed under the mat a bit, and I think a lot of people aren't aware of things for that reason. Like, I'm learning a lot about some of the issues that we're covering that, shockingly, I didn't know that much about, because it's kind of like you just kind of put it over there, like it's not relevant, it's not happening to you, but it is, it really is.
I think it's very important to make it real for everyone, to show that these are, like, although they're fictionalized, most of these actually took place for a lot of people back in history, and so it's very important for us to make it real for them. Don't mimic it, don't make it a silly subject, to make people come up front and realise that these things happened and they need to be addressed.
I think it's important to address the issues. You just need to just keep it important and keep reminding people that these are serious issues that we are talking about, and showing people through the play. Yeah, I've learned a lot with the whole Palestinian story going on. I've definitely done some research, outside research, before we even had the play. I was generally interested in the story beforehand. In terms of slavery, I do now see what they could have been thinking and how they could have been thinking about stuff, because Virginia isn't your regular slave. She's someone who's really empowered and like really powerful and has a lot of strength in terms of getting through what she gets put through. My heart really goes out to everyone in Palestine, really, because the things that are happening over there are so evil. I couldn't even fathom what I would do and how I would react and how I would go about trying to make the better of the issue, because I'm so grateful with what I have and everything I have now. And slavery, I would definitely make sure I don't forget where I came from in terms of ancestry and all that kind of stuff like that. I would definitely keep that with me.